is. But that is just another way of saying we're not going to help you because of. Okay? Every time you say we're going to give you a special privilege, you're saying to the other people, we're taking away or we're going to deny you the same equal privilege because of the color of your skin. And you see, I just think that that's a whole quagmire that we ought not to be talking about. And
this, though, is the hallmark of the left. They think, take finances as an example. They think that there's only so much money, that it doesn't grow, that you cannot increase the size of the pie. And every time Bill Gates gets a bigger slice of the pie, some poor slob in Pennsylvania somewhere their share of the pie is reduced, and it's already paper thin. So this is what they specialize in, is this idea of it's okay to put you down because you are fit into this particular class, so we can help them who fit into this particular class. And it's nothing but class warfare. And it's at the risk of sounding like I don't want anybody to receive vaccines or assistance, we shouldn't have a social safety net. That's not true. There are certain times. I just want it to be colorblind. I want it to be blind to every factor other than the fact that you're a Canadian. That's the only thing that should matter when we're talking about Canadian politics. And it's true of any country that you happen to be in that particular country, whether it's the States or whether it's Nepal or Japan. Those governments should primarily be concerned with their own citizens, regardless of what they look like, what they believe, or where they come from. And those are the things that the left seems to delight in trampling on. Take Joe Biden and his no borders policy. Now, he hasn't come out and said it yet, but he certainly has already made moves in that direction. Okay, so there's no sense of unity being built in the country, and a country's greatest strength is its ability to rally around its own flag in times of crisis. Whether it be war, pandemic, pestilence, whatever it is, okay, we should be able as a nation to turn to the flag and rally around and say, look, we are Canadians, we are Americans, we are Japanese, we are whatever. And because of that one fact, we are going to stick together and help each other with no other consideration. And that's the part that really the left specializes in, is killing that at its core.
Yeah. We try to... We say we're going to stay away from the pandemic, but it keeps creeping in. But it creeps in this
it's almost like
instance,
a virus.
Because this pandemic, what it's done is it's really helped to advance the push towards socialism, because now the government was giving it all these CERB checks, which, okay, we can understand people needed help during that time. But, when you start giving out free checks to people, they say, this is great. Like,
right.
please give us more of this. You guys are wonderful.
Which founding father was it?
Except the government didn't have to give out these free checks to help everybody. They gave out free checks to help people. And by the way, not free checks.
Not free checks.
As you know, because we're not going to pay for it, but our gradually. Remember this, every time borrowed money, a deficit is nothing more than delayed taxation.
Right.
Okay? Government debt is delayed taxation. So we're not going to pay it, but future generations are going to have to pay that back at some point in time, either directly out of their pockets or in lower services for the dollars that they're spending in taxes. And I've always said that when you borrow money, and I'm not against borrowing money in exceptional circumstances from time to time, I think that's an important function for the government to perform when it's critically necessary. But I think that we jump on it, and we do it all the time now as a matter of course. But I've always said that when we borrow money like this and we leave a future generation to pay for it, people who are not born yet, who have not voted, and whose representatives have not voted for that tax that they're going to be paying, that in my view it's a fundamental violation of the principle of no taxation without representation.
Yeah, but people can now vote at the age of 18. So there are 18-year-olds who think that this is great, that they're getting checks and they're getting support. they're going to, when 30, 40 years from now, they're the ones that are going to be paying for it. But we can't convince them of that. They're not listening.
Well, they themselves may not be paying for it. Their children and grandchildren, great grandchildren,
It depends how
are going to end up paying for
how
it.
deep
But,
the hole is and how far down the road you
but I
kick
just
that
want
can.
to point out, I just want to remind everybody, okay, that it was the government itself that created the condition
That's true.
where it was necessary to give that kind of help.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that those kinds of checks, the CERB program here in Canada, which was giving out payments to people who were unemployed as a result of the government saying you can't work because of this pandemic, and which is well, we're not going to get into that. Okay, that's a whole cesspool that we've talked about before. So we'll stay away from it. But I just think it's important to understand or to remember that. Okay, that's not just something that happened like, a hurricane happened and we have to step in and help people whose houses have been destroyed, okay, a natural disaster or whatever. That's something that was predictable, that we knew this was going to happen, but we did it anyway, or the government did it anyway, the decisions that it was making, knowing what the consequences were going to be. So they were paying for something, a condition that they already created themselves. So just by way of clarification, I don't want to let anyone off the hook on that.
And I don't blame you. I don't want to let them off the hook either because I know who it was.
But I want to go back. I'm conscious of the time here, but I want to go back to, again, from a strategic and or tactical point of view. I just think it's wrong for conservatives to try to continue to make the case that conservatism is all about equality of opportunity. It really isn't. There is no such thing in the world as equality of opportunity. Okay, it doesn't exist. It's a myth, and it's self-evidently wrong. So when we talk strictly now tactically speaking, when we go out and we try to sell conservatism and we talk about we're different because we believe in equality of opportunity. Well, people look around and they go, but what about those guys living on the reservation that have no running water? How can you say that they have children growing up there have the same opportunity as people growing up in Thornhill or in Hyde Park in Toronto or any, Forest Hills in Toronto or here in Ottawa in Rockcliffe? I don't think you can make that argument credibly. But you don't have to make the argument. The argument you have to make is that we're not equal in that sense. We all believe in equality before the law. That's a conservative principle. And beyond that, okay, we believe that each of us, as unique human beings, have to build our lives to the best of our ability in the direction that we want to go as individuals that we choose, okay, without the government interfering and telling us how we should be doing it. And to me, that's one of the prime functions of government, is to defend our right to confront our inequalities and in a way that makes the best sense to us. And to stop all of this whining and that, because, as I was telling somebody the other day, right, talking about oppressed people. I'm keeping an eye on the time, right? Yeah. But I was telling them, you don't have the right to lecture me about what it means to be an oppressed people. Like when I was telling this fellow, okay, when your great grandfather was maybe having to endure the indignity of sitting at the back of the bus, my grandparents, my father's parents, my father's brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles were being marched into gas chambers or shot, or they were being forced to perform slave labor, sometimes for years, and then they were marched into gas chambers or shot. Okay? And white privilege didn't help them.
No.
Okay? So you don't get to lecture me about what it means to be a member of an oppressed people, but you rise above that. To me, that's the nobility of the human spirit. And that's what I think as conservatives we need to talk more about.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about living in North America, is that we have risen above it. We're a much better society than the one before us and the one before our grandparents.
Yeah, of course, and we did, and society, people historically have done terrible things.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I have really sunk my teeth into is getting to know our own history. Because, yes, there's black marks on it. And you can run, and we all know what the list is. But of all the countries in the world, Canada has the fewest black marks on its record. If you look at the things we have accomplished that are positive, okay, our war record, nobody can touch us on our war record. On scientific advancement, in the field of engineering, everything from building the Canadian Pacific Railway, which bears its own black mark. I mean, the Chinese immigrants that were exploited. Right. In other words, I'm not trying to sugarcoat a history, just looking at it through a pair of unfiltered lenses, saying, okay, what was Canada's experience from the founding of Canadian history at the Battle of Plains of Abraham, which is where Canadian history starts, different than North American history and European history, to today. There's far more good things on it, and I get excited about our history. Yeah. And I want more people to understand that Canada is worth fighting for in every sense of the word, more than any other country on the planet, including the one to the south.
Right.
Last word.
Well,
Chris.
I'm glad my parents came here. They came to Canada for a better life, and they made a better life, and it's a better life for me, and hopefully a better life for my kids.
Where did your parents come from?
From Jamaica.
From Jamaica?
Yeah.
Okay.
From a nice warm country to a cold country.
Well,
I got a question. There's sanity on this one.
We were doing so well with global warming there for a little while,
right.
but I don't know. Now I'm not sure. Okay, look, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to take a break on the live show. And if you're listening to the podcast, then thanks for joining us. And catch us again next time on the Nick and Joe Show on ThinkRadio.ca.